Welcome to Fire and Life Talk, transforming a world one heart at a time. Hello and welcome to another episode of Fire and Life Talk. It is great to be here. As usual, we have a dynamic show coming before you. But first, I want to take some time. In our analytics on YouTube, it shows that Russia, Bosnia area, Poland, all of that are some of our most faithful viewers. But so we just want to send a word of hope to all of you. I know in this time of war and uncertainty, I want you to be encouraged and understand that if you call on the name of the Lord, he'll answer. One of my favorite scriptures is Jeremiah 33:3. It says, call upon me and I will answer you and show you great and mighty things that you know not of. So our prayer is that the Holy Spirit will comfort you in this time and lead you and guide you on the way to make every crooked thing straight, to bring that mountain of worry low, to the rough roads that's in front of you, that the Lord will make them smooth. So again, we want to thank you for watching, and to our other faithful viewers all over the world, thank you for tuning in. And like I said, we have a great episode today with Theresa Diamond. We're going to come on and talk about critical thinking. She's a retired mitigation specialist expert, and I'm trying to tell you, we've talked with her a few times. And I'm excited. But first, I got to bring in my good thing according to Proverbs 18:22.
Hello.
Hey, good thing. and I always have to say the scripture, he who finds a wife findeth a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. But, you know, we put our spin on it and say good thing. Hey, good thing.
Hello.
I'm excited to be here today, and I know you are as well.
I am too. I'm excited about talking about critical thinking.
Yes. And I know you coming out of the education field, you know, you've seen all kind of thinking in different ages of the little kids and everything. And we just thank the Lord that you was in a great school system that taught critical thinking even at a young age. Yeah.
That's right.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you don't mind, if you didn't have, I interrupted you. Did you have anything else?
No, I'm excited about getting Theresa Diamond on our show.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
Thinking.
She has done a great service to this nation, and we applaud her for that. She has so many accolades that we're going to talk about as well. But we like to welcome to you to Fire and Life Talk, Theresa Diamond.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
Theresa, how you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Honor.
Thank you for taking the time out to come on the show. We know you're very busy. You have a lot of things going. Even though you're retired, you still got a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
And so I just tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and some of the projects that you have going.
Well, I was born and raised in New York City in the South Bronx at a time
South Bronx.
Yeah, that it did look like Bosnia now and some other foreign places where it wasn't, quote, a war, but and so I was one of the successful, not the only successful people coming out of that environment. And because of my mother and her advocacy and her steadfastness and her belief in God, she guided all 8 of us to do service. She was a nonviolent activist herself, And it's led me into a lot of things. I've worked in the criminal justice system, probably every job you can name.
Okay.
And I always wanted to give back to my communities, and I always have. And so eventually I became a criminal, and I've done so many stuff. I would take all day to talk about it, but a mitigation specialist is something that people don't know about. And we are the people behind the scenes on death penalty cases, people charged with the death penalty.
Okay.
And I find, in short, I find mitigating factors for a judge or jury to consider as an alternative to death. And in order to do that, I go back 3 generations in the defendant's or my client's life, and I piece together. I dig up teachers, coaches. I'll go everywhere they've ever lived, worked, had friends, and I put a collage of things together so you can humanize that person, because I don't believe in death penalty. So in short, that's what a mitigation specialist does.
Wow, that's powerful. No, I did not know that. I know that sometime, and I'm on the outside looking in, and forgive my verbiage,
Sure.
but it depends on how much money you have. You can hire different investigators and people to do these things. But you actually worked for the court system?
No, I'm independent. I was independent. I was
Okay.
self-employed. I lived in Atlanta for 28 years. And while I was in Atlanta, I don't know, I worked for a agency that provided public defenders to defend people charged with the death penalty.
Okay.
And I was never good at politics in the environment. I went to work.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I got tired of them. So I went out on my own, and my reputation spoke for itself. And so I worked for public defenders who would call me and ask me to be a part of their team, even though I wasn't a part of their office. So I've been independent for a long time. And then I came out to Southern California because I understand that there were no African-American mitigation people in the entire Southern California. I said, what?
Wow.
So I did some critical thinking and I relocated out here, and I hit the ground running.
Wow.
Wow. First of all, I want to say thank you. Again, I can't say it enough. Thank you for your service. But just just in the first couple of minutes, what you was explaining about being a mitigator and what it takes, and what I'm saying is your heart is right.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you said you went back three generations, and you didn't have to.
Right.
You did all the digging and investigating and putting all these pictures together to humanize this person.
Well, the thing is, a lot of people don't get diagnosed and they have mental illness,
Right,
other difficulties, and you don't know it unless you go back 3 generations. You know, a lot of minorities don't believe in documenting their sicknesses.
but I tell you what, let's get into the title of today's show, Critical Thinking. Theresa, can you define critical thinking for us?
Well, I'm going to define it 2 ways.
Okay.
I'm going to give you some versions that most people can relate to, and then I'm going to tell you my version of what that is. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, so in one way or another, every person, business, or messages we receive, regardless of the medium where it comes from, is trying to change our current state in some kind of way. Move us from present to a new position. But the position is often more beneficial to them than it is for us.
Yes.
Now, that's one definition.
Okay.
So, and that they use analytics, reasoning to understand what's before you.
Okay.
My version of critical thinking is questioning.
Yes.
Asking yourself examining your own biases, that you may or may not know you have,
Wow.
and questioning again and being skeptic. And
Yes.
what it does, it allows you to go outside of your own head, to take in more information, to ask more questions, make informed decisions. Does that make sense?
Oh, that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
And in
You know, the
today's
Bible.
world, with everything, they have algorithm rabbit hole when they find out a very little information on you, and they project what they want you to do, whether it's buying something or project what they want you to listen to, which is somebody's opinion about something. I don't know. And that's why the internet is so dangerous.
Yes.
And people
Yes.
have gotten away from actual critical thinking on their own,
Right.
and don't question anything. So if
Right.
the adults are doing that, what do you think the children are doing?
Right. Right.
Yeah, and they're more in a digital age than we were.
Yes.
And yeah, and it's getting like little kids now, they get a hold of a phone at such a young age, they have access to the world.
Well, not only that, we're not talking to each other anymore.
Right.
Last time I went to a restaurant, because I don't go out to eat that often, I like my own food, but once in a while I'll go out. And last time I was at dinner, I saw a family of 6, mother, father, and the children, young age to about mid-teens. They were all sitting at the table like this. Their food was on there. They weren't talking to each other.
Wow.
And that consequences. Because when you get to be 18 or 21 and you go out to college or go out in the world, you have no idea not only how to socialize with people because you've been talking behind a screen, you don't think for yourself.
Right.
And I'm not demeaning people because they're using technology, because the world evolves.
Right.
But the problem is we're losing a lot.
Yes.
By not using critical thinking. And if you want, I'll give you some examples that are just everyday stuff.
Yes.
Well, we're interested in that. I know that that's a part of education.
Yes.
Teaching critical thinking, and that is important. So could you give us some of those examples?
I'll give you the first example I'll give you is, say you have a young child, 7 years old, and they want to go to the park.
Okay.
And they ask their mom, can they go to the park? And it's at noon, let's say. And the mother just grabs her keys and stuff and goes and takes their kid to the park. Then when they get there, there's a big event there. So the child can't do what they thought they were doing when they envisioned going to the park. So the mother tries to make an adjustment, but she can't because there's an official thing going on. So she takes the kid back home and simply says to them, I'm sorry, honey, but we weren't able to go to the park today. Critical thinking probably would have asked, well, what do you want to do at the park? Let's look online and see if the park is open. Let's see and discover that there is a planned activity. And then by doing that, that parent is really teaching the child to think before you act.
Yes.
And that's a simple example.
Yes.
But I can give you some more detailed example. And the reason I honed in on critical thinking in the first place is because most of my clients in the past have committed heinous crimes, unthinkable crimes, but they're still human beings.
Right.
And every one of them, including some serial killers I've had, when I sit down and talk to them face to face and talk to them about their lives and ask them questions and get to know them and develop trust, I'll ask them eventually this question. So before you committed the crime, did you think about the consequences?
Wow.
Most of them say no.
Wow.
Right.
So, I mean, and then I said, well, you didn't use critical thinking. They said, what's that?
Right.
Okay.
And so eventually the conversation is not to condemn them, the conversation is more of a teaching opportunity. And they say, yeah, if I had just sat back 5 seconds, I wouldn't be in where I'm at right now. Because I didn't think, I acted.
Yes.
So critical thinking in everyday life is something that can be used in your workforce. It can be used in school. And what it does is it encourages you to change your views about something. If you read an article, my mother taught us, that's one of the things that I love about my mother. I just lost her last year. But one of the things I loved about my mother, we would read something and we'd say, Mama, such and such a thing. She said, well, who wrote it? Who wrote it? And she said, yeah, you go research them, because so what? Not an opinion. You need to know who is telling you stuff.
Right.
You need to know
background, their mindset.
Their opinion should matter or not matter.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So critical thinking allows you to examine your own biases sometimes that you don't know you have.
That's right.
And I'll use myself as an example of how I use critical thinking to relocate at 60.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, Theresa, hold that thought. Because I know that's important. It's going to go into our next segment about the different mindsets, which you kind of alluded to. And I just want to thank you for tuning in to Fire and Life Talk with our co-host, my good thing, Gina, and our special guest, Theresa Diamond. We're going to take a commercial break, but come back because we're getting ready to go deeper.
Yes.
Media seemed to give the me idea. What I heard and saw there was fly, and I would have done anything to be that guy. So I blinded myself with the attitude I presented, the things that I wore, and the life I represented. I disowned the idea of his throne because as far as I had known, swag is what kept me from being alone, because that's what I was told. But this couldn't have been true, because when I looked in the mirror, no matter what I seemed to do, how I tried to dress, who I dated, or what I expressed, the only thing looking back at me was nothingness. I saw the fresh style, the blue eyes, and the crooked smile, but something was missing within me. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't listening. I was following. All the lefts, rights, ups, down, round and rounds. I had tied myself up in confusion. The illusions around me I thought had made me fly were just grounding. All my life I've been focused on not being me, but being them. Never once think about asking God to open his arms and take me in. I've been disoriented with the stripe that Satan had so proudly placed in my life, and that wasn't right. I need to be taken from the darkness to the light and understand that to truly know me, I had to be aware of who I was made to be. I had to let God mold me from my old being and stop fleeing back to the worldly things made to be so appealing. Therefore, I opened my heart knowing I'd be dealing with persecution every day. Whatever, I signed that contract anyway. And now Satan is scared of me. I'm his enemy. With God on my side, I have supremacy. But this wasn't easy. I'd open my eyes and realize that without God, my life would be deprived of vitality. I would have been stuck with the mentality that life was just a bare journey with no happy ending. But instead, God has shown me the beauty of his world and the remedy to knowing my identity.
Welcome back to Fire and Life Talk. We are having a great time with Miss Theresa Diamond, and she's talking about critical thinking. And I've already had to check myself from just the few things that she has said. And that is so important because we have to realize how we think.
Yes.
What is our mindset? What shaped our mindset? What influenced us? And, you know, I ain't going to try to take over and tell everybody what critical thinking is because you're the expert in the system that you used. But I'm just sharing about, it came to a point in my life where, you know, when you're in church and everything and it's preached, it's taught, you have to know Christ. You got to get to know him, the mindset of Christ. We have to think like Christ. So therefore, we have to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. But in the midst of that process, we got to know how we think.
Yes.
That's right.
We got to know how our upbringing shaped us.
Yes.
If we had traumatic incidents in our lives or something that we watched or, you know, everything. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Theresa, because I know you have all experience and expertise in this. And you were sharing before we left the break about how you felt led to pick up and move at 60 to relocate.
Okay. So I don't want to sound, I'm not a martyr. Let me just put that out there. I'm not a martyr.
Okay.
I go where God leads me to go.
Yes.
And I've always was drawn to filling a gap. If there was an opportunity to help something that I believed in, that's where I went. That's probably why I'm not wealthy, you know. So, and I'm okay with that.
That's right.
I was talking to a young lady that lives in Southern California, and she knew a person that I worked with on cases in Alabama. And she happened to tell me, she said, you know, we really need you out here. I said, who's we? You know, critical thinking.
Critical thinking.
She said, so the fact of the matter is that the majority of people charged with the death penalty are minorities. They're not just African American, they're Mexicans, you know, all kinds of minorities. And we don't have any African American people doing mitigation work. I said, you are kidding me. So first of all, that was a bias I had about California. California is supposed to be progressive.
Right.
I assumed that progressiveness covered everything. And here she was telling me an unadulterated truth. I said, oh no, that can't be. And I was tired of Atlanta anyway, even though I worked in Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, in all those southern states where they really kill people. I said I needed a change anyway. So my critical thinking was this. If I want to fill this gap, like I said I want to do, what do I have to give up? Do I have to give up anything? What about my base here? Because, you know, I was very well known. You know, I never had to hustle up cases. They found me. I never really had to chase behind someone to try to get a case. So I was blessed in that way. California is more expensive than Atlanta. How much is this going to cost? Should I put my stuff in a box and have it shipped? Should I get a truck? How much is that going to cost? I compared that to other means. So all of those things are critical thinking. What made me decide is that what I really wanted a change for me. And I look for win-wins. So I wanted to inject myself in an area that they needed. But I didn't do it without thinking about cost, real everyday things. Cost. Right. My best friends are in Atlanta. I even talked to them and said, well, you know, y'all going to FaceTime me? It also made me prices, like I told you. I thought progressive meant, you know, they would be on top of this, but no. And I came here. It cost me a lot of money that I didn't have, but we make sacrifices for things we want to do.
That's right.
Trust God more than anything else.
That's right.
I prayed about it. And I'll tell you something else. I make every decision with God at water. So I lived across the street from the Jimmy Carter Center in downtown Atlanta. And there's a beautiful lake down there that people don't know about. I went down there and I sat and I prayed and then I listened.
Yes.
my spirit guided me to do it. So that's why I did it. I said, God, whatever I haven't figured out, God to figure out a way. I came here. I was in demand immediately.
Wow.
I had some really, really tough cases. And I was happy to be the one to show up for them.
Wow.
So that's an example of my own critical thinking.
Yeah.
I had to do to make that decision, which is a separate issue from consulting God and listening to God.
Right.
Because
right.
I actually, I'm scared to make decisions without God.
That's right. That's
I mean,
what
I'm not a religious show, but I mean, this is part of my life.
Right.
That's right.
I mean, hey, we're here to just real talk.
Yeah.
We're gonna always glorify God, and a lot of times, Christians and non-Christians or whatever religion you are, we still have to utilize critical thinking, because in that process is very important, and we may miss something, and the Holy Spirit will remind us or lead us and guide us. Sometime it ain't the right time to move. You know, a few weeks later would be the right time. But one thing that you brought up that in our process and thinking concerning ministry, being an outreach ministry, international outreach ministry, we travel around the world. And one of the biggest things that we have to consider is culture. And culture shock, culture change. Hey, I've been to some nations, if you wave the wrong way, you could get in trouble. You know, or say the wrong thing. But I know one thing that people don't realize, that America is so diverse. There's a different culture from Atlanta and California.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So I know you had to deal with that as well. And the lingo, the language, the laid backness, you know, and
I
all
didn't worry
that.
about that, though. To me, that was the small stuff, because I know God would guide me through it.
Yes.
I know I'm a critical thinker. So I learned a lot. Don't just think that I gave. It was a give and take. I learned a lot. In the South, I remember a family, when I first met them, they were very skeptical, you know. And then as I talked to them and found out they were sharecroppers, I went back home and did my homework. And I knew generally about sharecroppers. But I went home and did my homework. And the next time I came, it was a whole different, because you have to meet people where they are. And if I didn't do that, I would have missed the mark completely. And I did the same thing when I came out to California. There's a lot of Mexicans in California. I'm not bilingual. I used to be, but I'm not bilingual. But I understand enough about the culture that they, you know, would relate to me.
That's right.
And then these are different Black people out here than it is in Atlanta. You know, we're not, that one size fits all. Anyway, what I'd like to say, though, what really hit me when we're thinking about critical thinking, I wrote this down. Critical thinking is an invisible algorithm in our head.
Wow.
That allows us to better understand ourselves, our motivations, and our goals. So now, like young people, you know, this whole thing about quitting jobs, I'm not going to judge them for it. This is what I will say. If you're in a job that you really don't like, and they want to get more out of you and pay you less, I'm not saying to take it. I'm saying you need to do some critical thinking. And then in that particular situation, you might want to look at some things you really are passionate or interested in, then do the research and find out what it requires for you to be able to do that work.
Right.
Then you need to talk about, I got rent, utilities, child support or whatever, and this is how much money I'm making now. And what would it take me, or how long it would take me to get certified or whatever to do that other job? And then build into that, well, how long would it take me to actually find a job? You know, these are things that people don't think about. Some people do, but most people don't. And when you make those kind of decisions, you find yourself trapped. Or if you don't use critical thinking, you'll stay on a job for 40 years that you hate. And all it does is take something from you. I call that vampire. sucking the blood out of you.
Yes.
You never
I've seen that. I've seen that over and over. I grew up in northeastern Ohio, and when I grew up, the steel mills was strong, the automaking. And I had uncles, aunts, cousins, all them. They took one bolt and put it in a hole for 30 something years. But and it's not everyone. It's not everyone.
Right.
Hey, it made a great living. The city was productive. People, you got a great education. So I'm not dogging it out. I'm not criticizing it. But me, I wasn't that one screw in the hole type person. I had to get out of there, and I was afforded to be able to go to the military. So yeah, that was my story. But in this process of critical thinking, Theresa, can you share with us perhaps some obstacles? I mean, you mentioned some, but let's go ahead and define them. Some obstacles that people run into and get stuck with putting that screw in the hole, so to speak, for 40 years.
Well, what I've witnessed is that people are resistant to you asking them questions. Number one, like I talk to young people that I don't know all the time, supermarkets, anywhere. I engage with them, and then they don't want you asking certain questions, so you come up against a brick wall in some ways, and it has less to do with your delivery than it does for their attention span, and their curiosity or lack of curiosity.
Yeah.
And so some of the obstacles are they live in an environment where nobody questions anything. That's the biggest thing I find. You got a family,
right?
And I'm not demeaning family.
Right.
Mothers and fathers go to work every day. Sometimes they have 2 and 3 jobs.
Yeah.
And in one sense, you could say they don't have enough time to talk, but you better find some, because somebody else will be talking to them, and it better be you rather than somebody else. And that's how these young kids and young adults just go off, just do crazy stuff. They don't have a practice in their home of questioning things.
Yes.
Right.
When we grew up, I'm sure we grew up in the same kind of time frame.
Right.
We weren't allowed to ask our mothers questions.
That's right.
And don't dare think you can ask your grandmama a question, because she's the one that makes the decisions for the family.
That's right.
So in some senses, culturally speaking, that happened. My mother was born and raised in the South, in Virginia. But she didn't want that for us. She made us question everything. So then one day I told my mother, this is critical thinking. I didn't think about what the ramifications were going to be. I didn't do any critical thinking. I said, Mama, why? There was 5 girls, 3 boys. Mama, why we got to get up at old dark 30 and gather all the laundry together? The laundry carts are taller than us, and our brothers are in their room sleep with their socks doubled and tripled. Here, the belt just beat me. I'm not going to the laundry. Woo! Of course, I didn't use critical thinking. But my mother thought about it. Well, first she said, get your, what out here with that laundry. And I was like, whoo, did I get away with that? No, I ain't get away. Well, my mother thought about it. She thought about it. Yeah. And when we came back from the laundry, she sat me down and talked to me. And she said, you know what? I didn't like the way you were speaking to me because it was slightly disrespectful. But you have a point. It's not fair for you and your sisters to go to the laundry while your brothers are sleeping with their tube socks all thrown all over the floor. You got to go and gather them up. She said, you know what? Yeah. I got 8 kids, so I was just thinking about in terms of kind of have some kind of structure. I never thought how it would make you feel. That dialogue right there is what made me different from my peers because of that dialogue. Those are the kind of dialogues you have to have in your home. And if you don't have it in your home and they don't teach it at school, because some schools teach it, and then the kids come home and try to apply it, it don't work either.
Right.
Because their parents don't know nothing about critical thinking.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a conflict from the school system and the home system.
Yes.
And the kids are caught in the middle. And if they don't use that critical thinking to even implement critical thinking to the parents or their caregivers, to like you did. You said, hey, you had this thought. Now you might have executed it in a way that it was some consequences, but your mom having the mindset that she did after she thought about it. Man, that's an awesome story, because the biggest thing we need to do is communicate.
Yes. Well, we don't communicate. That's just the point, Pastor Gary. In today's time, you see people glued to their phones because the algorithm, not the algorithm in your head, their algorithm is telling you what things you need to read, what people you need to follow. And we need to disrupt that, to have our own algorithm and use our own algorithm in our heads to question things. To ponder things. And in this age and time with all these now they're talking about AI. I don't even want to get into that, because I'll go what they call slap off on that, but sticking to critical thinking. If you use critical thinking in your daily life, what it does is you think better. You make better informed decisions. When you go through life every day and just do what's expected of you, you're not really living. And your authenticity of who you are and what you contribute to this world, that the gift that God gave you, whatever those gifts are not being rendered. Because you don't even know you.
That's right.
So critical thinking forces us to examine ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with examining yourself and coming up with a different way of looking at something than you've always looked at, than the way in which you've always looked at it.
Amen.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. If we learn who we are, why we were created. I think I've said this the past 3 or 4 shows with I forgot his name already. But anyway, the 2 most important days in our life is the day we were born and the day that we find out why we were born. Our purpose. Yes. But again, you have to have critical thinking to get to that point, because you have to ask those questions. Why was I born?
You're absolutely right, Pastor. But the thing is, you have to be exposed to critical thinking.
Yes.
Kids don't come here with critical thinking.
No, they do not.
So who's the first encounters they have? Their parents.
Yep, caretakers.
If the parents don't use critical thinking because their parents didn't use critical thinking, what substitutes for that are these.
Yeah.
You're right.
And what is this designed to do? It's designed to draw you in, make you spend money, follow people. Most of it's not even true.
Right. Right. And Theresa, what I call it, I've been calling it for years, is I singled it to America, but it's really worldwide, because they're putting the phone in everyone's hand around the world. I don't care the economic situation, status, or whatever,
they got free phones.
or whatever. Yeah. See, and but I call it the dumbing down of America.
Oh, brother,
that's it.
That's what I say every day. Dumbing us down.
Yes.
Yeah. Dumbing us down, taking us like cattle.
Down when we started using calculators. That was the beginning.
Wow. Yeah, because you didn't calculate in your mind.
Yeah. Exactly.
In your mind. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you know, Theresa, you share about, how we ask questions. I can remember asking Miss Tate, and I remember the name because she was tough. One of our teachers growing up. Why I need to use my head when I got a calculator? Oh my goodness, man!
I can imagine.
Yeah, that was a flushing written out in the classroom, sent to the principal's office, and I caught it when I got home.
Yeah, they started dumbing us down then. Yeah. And now it's completely out of control. And it seems to be an acceptable standard for a lot of people. I'm not going to, I can't paint a brush that covers everybody, but a lot of people live through that lens, and it's sad. And that's why their children become my clients.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
Yeah, that sounded an alarm right there. That sounded, and you because you're seeing it, you're seeing the results of it.
Yeah,
you're seeing the results of it. And correct me if I'm wrong. I want to throw this out there, but I'm seeing where more and more, a lot of our young children, adults too, there's no conscience. Because something you said at the beginning of the show, when you said you were interviewing like serial killers and things like that, did you think about it? They said, no, I didn't think about the consequences.
No.
Yeah.
So now it's like some of the youth that I've been exposed to be able to talk to and get an understanding and ask them about goals and desires and things like that. I've been told, well, I don't expect to live past 19 or 23. So therefore, I'm going to do what I want to do. I don't care about you, and I don't care about anybody around me, and I don't care about myself. It's just like their conscience is just gone. And I think we can equate that, maybe not all of it, but to the dumbing down of America.
Yeah, I think that's a part of it. And that's a good point that you brought out, because there are a lot of prongs to that. So empathy. My understanding from some psychiatrists, neuropsychs that I've worked with for over the years, my understanding is that if you don't develop empathy by age 7, you can't get it.
That's right.
Wow.
You're right.
So from age 0 to 7, what's happening in your house? Are you the parent that runs to the school and say, well, don't do this to my son, and make excuses for them, or say they deny that they did something? Or do you make your children see consequences to their behavior? That's how you learn empathy. Yeah. And if you're in a household that they lack empathy, if you're born or raised in a crack house, for instance, that's an extreme example, but I'm just because I've seen it.
It's real, yeah.
Yeah, it's real. And crack addicts are smoking. All they're doing is getting high. That's their whole goal. They're looking on the ground, looking for specks of white things, and somebody falls. Nobody say, are you all right? Just something as simple and subtle as that. Yeah. Or they laugh when someone's injured. They could be chopping up some food and cut their finger. Oh, and kids are watching that. If you're in that kind of environment, what do you think they're going to do? That's how they can stab somebody 17 times.
Yeah.
You have to show children at a young age to care for other people.
That's right.
Don't laugh at them when something bad happens. These are very basic tenets of being a society. But on top of that, we had COVID. And I really think, I wish I had the scientific ability to do the study myself. I don't. I know what my limitations are. But I really am convinced that the shutdown of people being housed in a house with each other, which they hadn't done in a long time. They hadn't had dinner together in years. They hadn't done all kinds, even lived together in years, even though they had the same address.
Right.
They started talking to people behind knees.
Yeah.
And they started getting aggressive because who knows who I'm talking to? I don't care. And after we started opening up, people were more outraged, more aggressive. They forgot how to socialize and what the short social norms are.
Yes.
It's like they forgot. And it's like a no man's land everywhere in every state. The outrage on the highways, they're shooting and killing people.
Oh, yeah.
If any one of those people had used critical thinking when they got mad because somebody cut them off.
Yeah. Right.
It's not personal. They cut me off. Okay.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
What are the consequences if I chase this person? They didn't, none of them used critical. But the more important thing is they didn't see the other person as a human being.
Right.
Right. Yeah, the empathy or lack of.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Well, I'll tell you what, Theresa, let's take a break. Keep that thought. I mean, hey, I already know we discussed this before the show, but we're gonna have to do. If the Lord say the same, we have to do a critical thinking too. I mean,
Yeah.
you blew me away
This is
with
some
some
good.
things.
Good.
Yeah. So we're gonna take a quick
Wow.
break. We'll be right
Good
back with
information.
critical thinking,
okay.
with Theresa Diamond and my lovely co-host, Pastor Gina. Welcome back. How time flies. We're coming to our last segment with Theresa Diamond. And again, like I said before the break, we're going to have to do another part 2 and hopefully soon, because this has been awesome. Theresa, you have brought up so many things. One thing that I do want to address is, okay, the lack of parental and our school system fostering critical thinking. But so let's fast forward and say, okay, here I am. I'm in my 40s, 50s, 60s, or whatever. I'd have made a lot of mistakes, but God has given me grace. I've gotten breaks. What can I do on a daily basis to cultivate critical thinking for long term and even to teach others?
Well, that's a very good question. For starters, I think you should be skeptical about any information that you're taking in. I'm not talking about being paranoid. Question it. Question it. Because what that does is that opens you up to another possibility. I'll give you a very practical example. There was a meeting in the community where this community leader said, we're going to build you a center that you've been asking for 25 years. Immediately, parents started thinking, yes, my kid can go there after school. I don't have to pay after school stuff. They're occupied. I mean, good things, good reasons.
Yes.
They didn't think outside of that. What they didn't think about is that man owned a company that would be doing it. So it was something in it for him, which is not bad, but he misled them and they didn't think about it. They didn't think about it at all, or what the ramifications might be. As it turned out, he went to jail. The center closed.
Wow.
That's a simple example. But you find yourself at 40, 45, or whatever age, and you you've not been exposed to anything, ask yourself, why is it that you're taking in this information, whatever that might be? Is it because it supports what you think? Is it because it supports what you believe? Or do you have the courage to step back and say, well, I believe this, but is there another possibility out there?
Right.
Because what that does is it opens you up to more possibilities that leads to more questions.
Yes.
And there's nothing bad that can come from that. Even if you wind up making the same decision, you still have taken the time and exercised your mind to objectively look at some other possibilities.
That's good.
So that's what I would say if you were an adult and you've never been exposed to that and you want to begin to do critical thinking. So critical thinking basically is asking yourself, like I said, your own personal algorithm, because everything is run by algorithms now. But if you think of yourself as being your own algorithm,
right,
ask yourself, well, why would I make this decision? What all is involved in that? What could go wrong?
Yeah.
What safety nets do I have?
Right.
Yeah.
Is there anybody that's going to help me? How can I get this done? What's it going to cost? All those questions. If you start to do that, I think you'll make more sound decisions in life, period.
That's good.
I want to give you an example of critical thinking in the criminal justice system. Can I do that?
Yes, go ahead. I'm going to put your email up there so people know where to contact you and keep in touch with you, because you got a lot of projects going on that's going to help this nation. But go ahead, Theresa.
Okay.
Share with us.
This is a true case, and it just broke my heart. One is because it was a young man. You know, young people dying needlessly. Now, it's a sad story, but there's a primary example of critical thinking. There was a young man in Atlanta who was, I'll say, falsely charged with raping his counselor, who went to pick him up from detention and take him to a group home. I investigated. I was a criminal investigator then. I investigated that case myself, and I know it wasn't true. Anyway, they railroaded this kid, and this kid's mother was just all over the map on drugs, and she didn't want him. She even asked me to take him, you know, that kind of stuff. Well, the first jury was a hung jury, first trial, so they had to do it over again. So in the meantime, while they were trying to get together to try him again for the same case, I said it's not fair for him to stay in jail while y'all figure out whatever. He's entitled to a bail.
Right.
He got out on bail. The first stop he made was at my office. He said, Ms. Diamond, I need to get a job, but I don't have the money for my ID. I said, let me talk to you first. So I talked to him and I said, listen, what it means that you're on bond means you're free, but you got responsibilities. He said, what you mean? I said, getting a job, that's good. I'm going to give you the money. You go over there, get an ID card, and go get a job. I said, but you got to use critical thinking. I actually said this to him. You have to use critical thinking. He said, what is that? I said, let me give you an example. You're on bond. Your friends are not on bond. You're walking down the street, going to the store. They drive up in a car, and they say, hey, you want to ride? If you, because of your ego, don't want to tell them, man, I can't get in the car with you because I don't know whose car that is. I don't know if you got license. I don't know if the police after you. I don't know if you just came from a robbery. Say anything, man. I need to exercise. You know, give yourself an out, man. Man, I'm trying to clear my whatever. And he said, wow. I said, because God forbid you get in a car with one of your friends. You don't ask them nothing. They don't have no license. They're a stolen car. You get in a high speed chase and the police get you. Well, I told him that Friday at 5 o'clock. I took a flight to Chicago to do a program, and I was at dinner, and his brother called me and told me he was dead. I said, what happened? He got in a car from one of his friends. It was stolen, and they got into a high-speed chase, and the young man lost control of the car, killed himself and my client.
My goodness.
Now that stuck with me. That happened in 1998, I believe.
Wow.
But that's a primary practical application.
Right.
But these young kids, if you go to juvenile detention for something, when you get out, somebody need to talk to you about the choices you made.
That's right.
Talk through and examine why it is you wound up there, how it is that you could prevent from going there, and what you need to do different. How did this happen?
Right.
Right.
They go pick their kids up and say, you better not do that again or whatever.
Well, even Theresa, the young adults and kids that we afford to be able to talk to, I try to get them to think, because this kind of blew me away. They don't mind going to jail. That's fine with them. Yeah. And I'm saying that's not right. That's your normal, but there's a whole nother life out there where you can utilize your gifts and your talents, because I know you got some. And I asked him, what would you really like to do if you wasn't wrapped up in this life of crime? And man, one guy told me, he said, I'd like to make suits and clothes. I said, man, you know how many churches is in here? How many pastor clients that you can get?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But you have to make the right decisions.
It's amazing, the young man and the older man that I've talked to behind prison or in jail. Once I establish a rapport with them and trust, and gain their trust, I ask them one question. I'll say, what is it that you secretly, that you didn't tell anybody about, that you've always wanted to do? And they kind of look at me. Every one of them have an answer.
Yeah.
What that tells me is that they had hopes and dreams.
Yes. Yeah.
So what happened between them getting the thought of hope and dreams to being in jail? Your house, your community, your environment. It was sad. One guy, he was like 6'4", 240. I was in Illinois teaching them how to use mitigation for non-death penalty cases. And after I got to see him a couple of times, he was a white guy. Because, this is not discriminatory. This is everybody.
Right. Yeah. That's right.
I said to him, I asked him that question, and he burst out into tears.
Well, Theresa, we're coming down to the last minute. I want to thank you for coming on to the show. Yeah, time goes by fast. Like I said, we're going to do this again, and I'm serious. We're going to do this again. But what you just explained is a broken world, which has a broken home, which constitutes broken communities from broken people, and that can be fixed by the Lord Jesus Christ if we just surrender our lives to Him. And man, we got so much. I lost being a host. And I got caught up. I did, and I got caught up in the show, and that is great. But I tell you what, Theresa, again, you have a standing invitation to come back anytime you want to. Please contact Theresa Diamond, and also thank you for our viewers around the world for tuning in to Fire and Life Talk. We'll be back again if the Lord says the same, to encourage, educate, empower, and equip you for a better life. Until we see each other again, God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to Fire and Life Talk, where Jesus is Lord. If you would like more